Good afternoon to everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're going to talk about one of the most popular, most worldwide, across all industry questions, keeping busy most of the board meetings everywhere. How to build credible ESG strategies. And to join me on that business case, I have the pleasure to welcome Patricia Poku-Diaby. Please join me, Patricia. And Jean-Claude Lasserre, please warm applause for them. But before starting our discussion, I'm gonna introduce a bit the subject with a few general points about ESG. And myself, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Marc Roussel. I'm the head of Africa for Bureau Veritas. I've been working in Africa for over 15 years now. Bureau Veritas is active in more than 30 countries in Africa and active in Africa for more than 120 years. I'm supposed to have a presentation. So, let's start with a very simple point, is what is ESG? ESG is first E. E stands for environment, which is one of the main concerns of the 21st century. What we're going to look at for environments is the impact of the company's activities on the environment. And there, one of the main topics at the beginning going to be the impact of resource consumptions of any businesses. That kind like carbon footprint, wastewater discharge, or air quality. The S stands for social, obviously, and here we're going to start look at the way the company is impacting the local community where they operate. But not only externally, but also we're going to look to the internal policies of the companies related to labor, to diversity, to inclusion. And the way companies are fostering their people and the culture inside the company will have a huge impact later on the society. The G stands for the governance, and here it's very important as well. It's a tricky one because it's to make sure that everything we do is turned into actions. And that relates to any internal processes, control system, in order to be compliant everywhere, every day. Not an easy task. So why is ESG so important? First of all of us, we have some moral duties to take care of our kids and take care of our grandkids. But also with the COVID-19 pandemic, we also have all understand that we need to build up more resilience in all our systems. That's key for our businesses. Now, on top of that, you can see that more and more private equity, financial investors are looking to the ESG strategy of the companies to assess the management of the risk and to assess the long-term return they can do from the companies. But more of that also, if you look to what's happening, you can see also that the soft pressure is becoming and transforming little by little into hard law. Many in Europe, in US, in Africa, many more governments are approving new laws regarding that. So all that are kind of a negative impact. But what is the benefits of ESG? The first one is to avoid the negative impact of not doing ESG strategies. But you've got also multiple positive impact of doing ESG and starting robust ESG strategies. The first, environment. Environment, you can attract more customers, you can expand your potential markets, you can also, by saving on your energy consumptions, reduce your operational cost. Social, it's definitely helps boosting the employee morale, having a better community relationships and improving the relationship around. It's also help HR to attract good talent. It's more and more important for a young generation. And governance will help you a lot avoiding any violations and can help you also to have better relationship with the local regulations, with the local governments and the local institutions, which is our key as well. Closing the gap of the profit versus planet gap, I would say. Several companies have started that journey of ESG. And they share already a few tips. One is use SDG. SDG is a Sustainable Development Goals set by United Nations to inform leadership. It's a good way to have a kind of a checklist of where you can work and what is expected from you, which is important to understand. Connect with the need. What does it mean? It means internal people in charge of looking for the support of everybody inside the company. They're going to have to create and track metrics that make sense and relates to the interest of the people inside the company. As for example, for operational, to make metrics and to show to the operation that consumption saving will impact positively the cost or the efficiency of operations. Also, tips they shared, they said instead of just having a spot answer to satisfy your customer on sustainability, is better to set a long-term holistic vision, which is embedding all the aspects of ESG, which is much more motivating for all the people inside the company and much more clearer for external stakeholders. And make sustainability a core principle. It means little by little reshaping all your procedures, processes, mindset, culture to align completely the mindset of the company with the final goal. So how can you start working on ESG policy? It's not that easy. The first point is to learn. Learn ESG standard, policies. What do we expect from you? It's not, some aspects are very obvious, very simple. Some aspects may be surprising. So it's good to check before engaging in the ESG strategies. Second point is to set priorities. And here it's good to work with all the stakeholders, can be the investors, can be your customers, can be your employees, to assess what is the most relevant to your own company. Then you're going to enter into a more classical leading change project for the company. But this one, that project, going to impact the complete company because it's a daily mindset. Then, of course, in your ESG strategy, don't forget to look along all that process to any opportunities you may have to benefit from ESG new environment. But that's a bit theoretical. I'm sure you are all looking forward for something a bit more concrete with real example from real life in Africa. And for that, I'm very happy to welcome Patricia Poku-Diaby. So Patricia has started a career in Ghana in trade and transport business and set up her own company in 1993 in the agricultural trading. And then in the spirit of adding more value and national development, set brand new agri-processing, cocoa agri-processing facilities in Ghana first in 2010, and then in Côte d'Ivoire. Huge achievement, and she will share with us very soon how she went through all that, having at the same time ESG strategy. Jean-Claude, another iconic leader in Africa, is the CEO of Saint-Gobain since 2018, has been working for Saint-Gobain for 25 years, but as of today, as the CEO of Saint-Gobain in Africa, is looking after operations in 17 countries, having 22 manufacturing facilities. And Jean-Claude has already worked in many countries in the world, including Europe, Asia, South America, and Africa. So on top of Africa, it's also bringing a lot of experience and vision of all across the world. So maybe let's start. Maybe one of the first topics I would like to have your feedback on is in ESG. How do you navigate with the regulatory environment? How do you set your priorities? How do you select your objectives? That's my first question, because it's quite complex. Huh? Patricia, maybe you can start with your example in Ghana. You've got...
Thank you. Greetings all. Thanks to the organizers for the opportunity to share our views and to the audience here. So as you mentioned, we are in cocoa processing and in Takoradi, Ghana and Abidjan in Cote d'Ivoire. In terms of regulatory obligations, in Ghana, for example, we work with the Ghana Standards Authority, who would not only ensure that the quality of goods and services is maintained, but also provide inspection, testing, metrology. We also work with FDA, which is the Food and Drugs Authority. We do not produce food that would go from the shelf to the mouth. Our goods are meant for further processing, but we do produce food ingredients, and so are required to meet the standards of the FDA. The factory inspectorate, who would ensure compliance with health, safety, technical, and welfare, fire service, labor department, and so on. But much more than the regulator, we are in an era where the consumers are more of the watchdog. With globalization, we have become each other's keeper. Today, the consumers, even kids, are becoming more and more demanding. They want accountability. The society has become the keeper of order. And choices these days are guided by these criteria. So it falls on us to constantly revisit and improve our structures so as to meet these requirements at all times. So with the establishment of Plot Ghana, the objective was to create a company that would be able to compete with large international companies in the cocoa processing space. To gain a foothold in a market virtually dominated by multinationals, we had to distinguish ourselves by enhancing the technical setup. And that saw the creation of what was probably the largest single development across the process chain by a totally Ghanaian, non-governmental corporate at that time in 2010. To gain access to the market, we, a local company, were the first in 2011, barely a year of existence, to accomplish the highest standard certification at that time, ISO 22000, when most, even the multinationals, were still at ISO 9000. We graduated to FSSC 22000, BRCA, etc. This gained us the recognition amongst our customers for our brand, the Gold Star brand. The Cote d'Ivoire plant, which came later, is being modeled in stages along the same lines as the Ghana plant. We also deal with the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, and their function is self-explanatory. And it is not a burden for us, as we ourselves are passionate about the adherence to the environmental rules and regulations. I mean, today, the society would want to know how you perform as a steward of nature. So in a nutshell, our food safety system, our technical setup, our processes, have formed the basis of keeping our operations in line and on track. And we have a system has not made the regulatory obligation be a stumbling block for us. In fact, we have a fluid system which gives us the satisfaction of working very well with the regulators and passing annual audits and re-audits.
That's great. What I heard is you talk about regulations, you talk about, but also being proactive or behind the regulations and look to the expectation of consumers and pay attention to the consumer expectation and meet those expectations even before the law.
Exactly.
And you use also all the traditional scheme to prove that what you're doing. So what is the view of Jean-Claude of a huge international company mentioned by Patricia? How do you, at Saint-Gobain level, how do you set your targets? And I've got another question is, how those targets the same for across the world, or do you have some kind of different targets for Africa? How does it work?
Yeah, I think it starts from in reality what a company is for in reality, and I think at the end of the day, because in ESG you have these three components, but more than those three components, we have many people involved, stakeholders internally or externally, and regulatory is only a part of it. But obviously, governance is mandatory, obviously, for any company to work well and to go on. And it's a value that we had in reality in many companies for years, in Africa and out of Africa. Social is in Africa even more with communities, and I think we'll come back later on. And for environment, I think, more than the regulatory issue in reality, is more about what we can and we have to do in reality to reinvent our business model. And I think this is all about. And at Saint-Gobain, in reality, basically speaking, we are a bit, if I want to say, particular, because, at the same time we work on environmental to reduce, in reality, our footprint from a CO2, and we are very strong target of, as many companies, to be carbon neutral at one time for us is 2050, but more than that in 2030, to have already 33% less emission direct, so what we called scope 1 and 2, so direct and indirect. But it's also a main driver of our business, because we are producing product to try to save energy to our customer base, to build better home, to try to have a better windshield for the cars, etc. Many things that at the end of the day will improve the energy efficiency of a building, of a car, and maybe reduce the use of fossil in the element. So I think it's key element. And when I see in reality Africa versus the rest, I think this is the beauty of the scope. We have only one planet, so I think we can have 200 different topics, continent by continent, and I think this will not help. For years and years, some emerging countries, and particularly Asiatic countries, were expanding very quick, and we're saying to the Western world or to the whole world, yes, guys, but you are developed already, and we have to develop. So I think now, with all the COP that have been done, everybody try to see, and at each level, for example, in Africa, we have exactly the same target that's all around the rest, but it doesn't mean we don't create new entities. We are heavily developing new plans, but we are also heavily developing new solutions to try to save more CO2 for our customer. And I think this, at the end of the day, this is a very positive circle in reality for us. So I think regulatory, last point I wanted to say about the regulator and about the laws, it can be also very positive. And I think this is also a lot of advocacy that, for example, we do with many other entities, via, for example, NPOs or Green Building Council around Africa, is to try to promote the fact with the government that we have to take care of our future and in reality to have more circular economy, use less raw material. I just wanted to say something about the buildings, because we are really in the building sector ourselves, and more than 40% of the CO2 emitted in the planet is to build or to operate building. 40. It's not at all what the people think. We always think about, cars, big plants, etc. And, and if we continue to build as we do, we will need 2 times more raw materials than today in 10 years from now. What is just unsustainable. So we have to do things differently and to try at the same time to have technologies to help us to reinvent in reality of future, whatever the continent is, because I think this is a key element. If not, we'll have to get more energy, and more energy.
And in discussing before that meeting together, I've seen that in your target, you have one which is circular economy. Can you explain maybe in few words how circular economy is included in your business?
It has a very big impact because if you see from the environment perspective, before to go to the social perspective of ESG, in environment, obviously speaking, the closer we are from our raw materials, the closer we are with the product that we can recycle, reuse, the best it is for the saving of raw mats, basically first, and obviously reducing the footprint in terms of carbon footprint for transport. And I think this is obvious. And so, but from a social perspective in Africa, it has also a very big impact because it means that, for example, at Saint-Gobain in Africa, more than 95% of our raw mats are locally to produce a product local to serve a local customer. And I think this allows communities nearby our plants, or 23 plants in sub-Saharan Africa, to get some quarries, some products, some small and medium enterprise that we can develop, and at the end of the day, that also participate to the social element of the ESG level, that is to create jobs. That is a main topic also in Africa. So I think it's a part also to get the best of the, not the mondialization, but the localization also of these elements. And I think it's important. And we have strong targets in each of our plants to have a localized circular economy, SMEs as our customer base. And I think this is a key element for us.
Thanks a lot, Jean-Claude. One question, I will come to Patricia on that, the same question just after. But when you are a big company, big multinational, operating in many countries, you set targets, you say we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But how do you track progress? How do you make sure that everything is happening as per plan everywhere in your countries? And how do you make people supporting the move, because it's a huge change?
The top-down approach doesn't work anymore, and particularly with the new generation. So this is obvious. So I think we cannot dictate it. So first and foremost, we have to embed ESG in our full strategy. And I think this is a component, is a pillar of our strategy. And to do that, it's obvious. We have, for example, 20% of all the earnings, the bonus of all our managers that are linked to ESG. So
20%.
20%. So it's a basis. And I think at the end of the day, later is to convince first our stakeholders, then our suppliers, then our partners of that element. Because again, we try to make a synthesis of what ESG is, but in reality, ESG is a way of living in society. And I think this is very complex. So we have later, obviously, plant by plant, topic by topic. For example, I can go very far, but each plant we have targets, measurement of the water we consume, the water we use, the water we recycle, how to reduce the number of the liters of water, how to treat it, obviously. I take this very, very example. We have the same, obviously, for energy, for consumption of raw materials, for using waste materials as much as we can instead of brand new product. That we are the worldwide biggest producer of glass in the world for cars or for buildings. And reusing a lot of used glass, for example, is a key element to save. And we just announced, by the way, in Europe that we succeeded to make the first time a glass without CO2. So that means using only waste materials and using also energy that is renewable to have a zero CO2 emitter glass. So I think this is the things that the technology will help us to do. We don't have all the answer, by the way, on the technology how to cope with, but we are working on.
Thanks a lot, Jean-Claude. Patricia, in your businesses, is that easier? How do you track progress? How do you make sure people are supporting your ideas We talked together before. You told me you go behind the regulations, but if I am an employee, I could think, why do you care? It's not even legal. Why do you bother me with that? I'm a bit provocative. How do you manage that?
At Plot, our ESG and impact strategies lie at the heart of all our activities. Every action goes through a process of verification or approval and is documented for reference or corrective actions. So our structures hold the foundation to delivering impact on our ESG strategies. To start with, we recognize that governance is a must and transparency is key. So we have a strong board with executive and non-executive members and independent members as well. In our environment, it is important to separate ownership from management. Even though we have a general manager and other departmental heads, the food safety, because we're in food safety, the food safety processes is the direct responsibility of the CEO, led by the quality head, assurance head, and the food safety team leader, whose direct reporting line is to the CEO to ensure full food security, avoid conflict of interest, and thereby safeguarding its integrity and independence. We know that for every establishment to succeed and grow, it's fundamental to have viable ESG strategies. I mean, today the social criteria would examine how as a company we manage our relationship with our employees, with our consumers, with our suppliers, with the communities where we operate. To that effect, we see our employees to be our greatest assets. We invest in training, and welfare is key. For example, we organize quarterly communication derbers as a direct and effective channel of communication on the company's operations and also address employee welfare and areas of concern. I must say we have a very friendly work-employment relationship, and we refer to ourselves as a Plot family. I mean, as in every company, there are movements in and out. With all the exit interviews we conduct, the one regret that appear in all of them is how they'll miss the fraternity that exists. Still on the social front, we support farming communities and encourage them to practice sustainable farming. We pay premium on the cost of their produce as a way to encourage them to adhere to this program. We support and engage in other social activities within the Western region, that is where we are. And today, one of the issues facing the agribusiness sector in Africa is the sustainability of raw materials of farm produce for further processing due to global climate change. We, as far back as 2011, when the onset wasn't the talk of the day, we acquired 240 hectares of land to plant trees and planted 100 hectares of plantation wood out of our own pocket, I mean, solely funded by us. We also collaborate with farmers and others in the value chain to practice reforestation. And we also encourage farmers in awareness in environmental awareness, just to mention a few.
That's great. Huh? It's very impressive the number of actions you are describing to us, and you are kind of a really 360 impacting positively your environment, which is great. Huh? And we can see the result as of today. It's a great result. So talking about result, what is your view? Because very often we can hear, okay, but ESG is too expensive, we cannot afford it. if I do that, I'm going to lose my profit. But you are a very successful company. So what is your view on the bottom line, I would say the bottom line impact of ESG strategy? Is that positive, negative, neutral? Are you advocate to continue, or if you can have avoided it, you will not do it? I'm sure it's not.
Yes, the impact on the bottom line is significant, but we do not let that detract us. For example, I shared the forestation project. You can imagine the cost of planting, nurturing, keeping and protecting 100 hectares of plantation wood is no small feat. And out of our own pockets, without any support or grant from any external organization. I mentioned the society. We found a way to roll out our society developmental plans and sustainability programs by embarking on what I call third-party labels. And the cost of training the farmers to be able to pass this audit is sizable. Again, we solely fund the solely buyers. We do this through our source and local buying company, or LBs in Ghana, and in Cote d'Ivoire, partnering with farmers to form a cooperative. Let me share something with you. In Ghana, we were the first local ABC to start this certification program in 2009, when the society was not as demanding, and out of our own pocket, I would say, without any support from anyone. Later on, when other big names signed up, immediately they got grants to carry out this program. Obviously, they were able to achieve much more in a relatively shorter time, whilst we dived even into our working capital and did not achieve as much as we wished to, because we founded everything. So you see, even in this regard, the who you know syndrome plays. We also, for example, as part of the environmental requirements, we have a wastewater treatment to ensure there's little or no effluent discharge into the surrounding communities. So the process is fast, and the water, when the toxins are removed, is crystal clear and safe, which we use for not only for cleaning our drains, but for watering the lawns, and at least there we save cost. But with a farming certification, which is quite expensive, at least it increases the livelihood of the farmers, and to some extent, on the flip side, it gives us access to a niche market with improved pricing, and that helps.
That helps.
We also have a shell boiler, which we use more than the oil-fueled boiler, and there are studies underway to gear towards biofuel, using our shells to power other parts of the plant, and not only the boiler as is the case. So the financial commitment is huge. Nevertheless, we remain committed to our ESG objectives and are actively guided by the principles and practices some of which I mentioned.
And just another question, what would you like to happen to get more recognition for what you're doing? What is your dream?
Recognition, yes, but if I give you the dates where we took certain actions, you can see that we did it not because we were looking for that recognition as it is today.
Just for belief.
We believed in.
Okay,
but what I would wish is that we are put on the same playing field, sort of. I mean, we do something on our own and others join, other big names join, and rather they get all the support.
Okay, thanks a lot, Patricia, and congratulations once again, because you've got strong belief, which is having a positive impact around you, which is very good. So, Jean-Claude, in your case, it's a bit different because you've got the ESG. What is the bottom line impact of ESG strategy? But you've got also products which are highly impacted and market which are highly impacted with the evolution and the impact of the new ESG requirements. So for Saint-Gobain, what is the bottom line impact and what is the negative cost and positive cost?
You know, if we take the environment part, so clearly speaking, there is the both. The more the construction go on the good direction. You know, for example, I take an example. Not in the construction, by the way, on the mobility, you know, when by putting glazing, for example, for electric cars that are much thinner and at the same time that allow the temperature in the car to be better maintained, you know, you can run 30 kilometers more. So it has a very huge impact in reality on the cost of the battery and the evolution. At the same time, you know, a certain insulation business that we do, for example, you know, a typical isover roll, you know, for such a building, by the way, after 3 months of usage, you don't have any CO2 on this product from the creation of the product, transport, and retreatment at the end. Why? Because you save so much energy of air conditioning or in Europe heating that you pay it after 3 months. So it's a huge impact. So obviously speaking, all the renovation of the building that is coming all around the planet is very positive for us. On the negative side, if I still on the environment, for us obviously is to think about what will be the need for tomorrow. And I think on our plan, for example, to get the less impact, you were talking, for example, of different energies, new technologies. You know, I give one we discussed already, but in order not to kill ideas that are very expensive today, but that are needed for tomorrow in our plans, in reality, we put in our capex decision, in reality, a cost of the ton of carbon that is around 100 euros. So that means a project can be not viable today, but it will be viable tomorrow because we say, okay, if it allows to reduce the number of CO2 by X ton per year, it will have a payback of 100 euros multiplied by this tonnage. So I think it's very positive at the end of the day, but it's already mandatory. I think we have no choice in reality at doing it. So this is from the environment and from the social element. Okay, clearly speaking, is about also our communities or people. You know, I think more and more young generation want to work in companies where they believe in, when they have a vision. You know, and I think it's also a way for us to grab the best talent and to keep them. So I think this is a key element also for us. So I think payback is clearly positive, and by the way, is a must-have. So this is another story.
Yes, thanks, Jean-Claude. Definitely is a must-have, and we need to move. As you say several times, we've got only one planet. There's no choice. But as private companies, you also need to find a solution to be viable projects and to find solutions which are viable for the future. Because you can please yourself for a few minutes or a few months or a few years, but at the end of the day, you need to find the right balance. There's no escape. And bouncing back on what we were saying before with Patricia, what would be your, if you have any, maybe you have none, wish to improve the recognition of companies having maybe more appropriate ESG strategies, or to maybe a bit more innovative at the forefront? And how can you ensure maybe more fair competition, as you say? Let's put it that way.
Yeah, you know, it's a reason why also today you see more and more, and you know, and Veritas can tell us a bit more about that. But there are many agencies now that are noting or that are trying to give notation, and you know, some to avoid in reality a type of greenwashing, but to be sure that in reality what we do and we implement is good. So I think the next step is more than that. The positive one will be effectively to have in some tenders, in some big construction tenders, some the best offer and not the cheapest offer. So I think a type of mix between what is the real value in reality for the customers, and I think this is a very strong point. But I wanted also to take one example that I saw in South Africa about some of my colleagues in a business in Buza that is the business in South Africa. You know, some people can have some market locked in the coming years because the CO2 embedded in their products is too high. And I think this is also the new competition that will come. You know, I take the example of South Africa, for example, and it's a very big problematic for the government today. You know, electricity is a coal energy, is a coal electricity, so in reality it embeds a lot of CO2. And so today you start to see some purchasing in US or in other countries stating, 1 minute, your aluminium that you produce in South Africa is in reality embed too much CO2 versus the aluminium of country X, Y, Z. So, you know, on a positive side, I think, is to try to have a positive, to push positively the entities, and it's not only subsidies for R&D, but it's also in tenders. On the negative side, I think if the companies don't move, the risk is that some countries, or by, for example, you know, we heard also that some continents try to get some CO2 cost at the entrance. You know, it can be maybe a new duty someday. So I think all those elements, in reality, positive and negative, are I think what we do, and obviously we dream to be on the good side if possible.
Yeah, and definitely one point maybe I didn't mention at the beginning is the new law you can see on ESG regulation definitely is impacting not only the home country, because even if you're sitting, as you say, in South Africa or anywhere else in the world, you're going to be impacted by the law of the home country of your investor, of your customers, of your market. And because most of that law make you responsible for all what's happening along the supply chain. And there's one thing, sometimes I think people are maybe not realizing, or as you say, maybe they're going to realize too late, when we're going to say, no, you cannot sell, we cannot buy that. And I think it's we need to make people aware of the risk of not keeping updated with what's going on those subjects, because at some point in time, as you mentioned, you may end up in a very tricky situation with no short-term solution. Because as you say, Patricia, as for example, for you, you started very many years ago on many different aspects. But if tomorrow you are requesting to be compliant with everything from scratch, that's going to be very, very tricky as an entrepreneur as well. It's not going to be an easy one, Go. So thanks a lot. Now I think it's time for maybe if we have a few questions, Q&A in the assistance. Is there any questions? Is there Mike? Can you?
Thank you very much for this presentation. I have two quick questions. Quick to ask, I'm not sure about the answer. The first one, Jean-Claude, you replied partially, so I'm going to ask Patricia. How do you set your KPIs? You said that you are trying to do more than the regulation. Are you trying to do better than what you did the previous year? Or is there industry benchmark? Or are you listening to what your clients are looking for? And my second question, then for Jean-Claude, is how do you communicate to your stakeholders? And what would you like to see, or what change would you like to see in the coming years in terms of regulation to communicate? Is it important for you what you do to show to your market, to the market, to your clients that you do better than your competitors, for example? So how this is happening?
So with regards to KPIs, first of all, there are the regulators and all who have set the benchmarks. There are all these certifications who have standards that serve sort of guidance and benchmarks. But beyond that, just for example, if you have a specification sheet of something, they will tell you metal, ferrous doesn't content up to so much. But I say to myself, would I give this to my granddaughter? So is it because I just want to stop at where the regulators ask me, or do I want to make it safe enough that I would want to give it to my granddaughter? So yes, in doing that, you not only meet the requirements of the regulator, but I always say that two things. I mean, there's your conscience as well. If it's okay with your conscience, it means even though with the regulator, it's okay, but then is it okay? So once you fulfill the regulator and you have a clear conscience, I think to me that's good enough.
Regarding the recognition in reality, and how do we want to communicate basically versus our stakeholders? I think there are two different things. Externally, clearly speaking, we need to have more entities, more certification, more tags, more whatever that are not questionable. And I think this is a key element, because also the problematic of ESG is that it's so complex that depending on the weighting of the different elements, you can have Mr. X that is quoted A or C, and I think this is something that I think everybody should agree in reality on where to go. And so today we see more and more some entities that looks like to get, I think, the backup of for example, the big financing institution that later on will issue green bond or not green bond. So I think it's interesting to see. So from external with that, and obviously for the new generation outside, I think social media are the key topics that we are working on more and more to push a product in reality on the perceived value, on the value itself, more than on the usual way of doing advertisement. And internally, because let's not forget that ESG has also a lot of works to do internally in reality, because we have to change the behavior of our R&D guys towards to change a bit their brain, to or people in the processes also, because we didn't discuss this, but for example, for energy saving and all the processes, IT is a key element inside the company, and I think we have to do. So is to make them proud about that and to have small little things, small little hacks. And for example, in Saint-Gobain actually, we are launching a system with a small little hack and with good ideas that we put money on to make it change, on energy efficiency, on recycling, on helping communities. So it's really on all the ESG elements, where at the end of the day, we make also our employees actors and ambassadors of our values. And I think this is a key element, I think, for us. And if as us in the world, you have 170,000 ambassadors, it starts to be something. Plus the family, it starts to be something.
Definitely. Regarding regulation, as you say, all certification scheme, you are judged versus referentials. So it's true as of today, it's still a kind of a moving area with a lot of financial indexes, a lot of different schemes. But definitely, if you look to what's happening in Europe with the IFRS, and many people are working and start to move into one direction. But the point also, it also means that once everybody going to agree on one way to judge the ESG behavior, I would say, it's going to become legal, and it might be for many people a bit too late to comply. That's a point you also. So it's very important also to stay aware and advise our companies to be part of association, to discuss with your industry, and to keep aware of what's going on. Because you may do many things and suddenly be surprised, because we are requesting you to do one thing you are not at all in line with the expectation. So that's also a point which is important to me. Maybe we have time for one or two more questions. Go ahead. There's a guy normally.
Hello, good evening. I've got two questions regarding the S of ESG, I mean the social part. The first one is, how do you make sure that all the employees of your subcontractors are compliant? Contract of employment, pay slip, paid on time, medical insurance, pension, etc. Second question is, do you set up HR policies for your subcontractors to make sure that everyone is on the same level? Thank
That's
you.
a good one. Thanks a lot.
No, it's a very good one.
It's a very good one.
And in reality, you know, it's a never-ending story because we had that on many topics. It's only on our social responsibility, but it's also, I don't know, on even more than that, on the legal aspect in reality even of our suppliers. So yes, we have audits from third parties to small and medium enterprise, people that are nearby. Is also the reason why to be on a circular economy has a big advantage, because when you know in reality the ecosystem that is behind you, you can know much more how they behave because you have the feedback, you know. You remember all the stories of some big multinationals in the past with South Asia, you know, that were trying to look for goods, and at the end of the day saw that in reality young kids were working in those plants. So this is obviously something that each and every entity wants to avoid. So yes, so we have you know, for example, documents, you know, purchasing department. It's not only illegal. It's not the people sign everything and don't do. We are making a regular audit. We are making also certifying some of our suppliers, and I think this will be more and more important in the future. The problem is all the aspect, and where do you have to stop? Because you know the HR policy of an entity, the wages that is paid, there is a legal framework, but further to that, later on, we have few to say. But it's something that we are working, yes, with a precise scope.
Yeah, and just I can mention as well, as Bureau Veritas is very often a third party, and we can see that either you've got some companies coming to us asking us to assess suppliers versus an existing scheme, which is, you may have been through that, but also some international companies having their own referentials and asking us to go to several suppliers and to assess their compliance versus the multinational standards or any company standards. But it's a key point, not an easy one as well. As you say, it's up to where you can go is a key one. Maybe one last question before concluding, if there's any other questions. So maybe I'm going to thank you a lot, Patricia and Jean-Claude. Maybe a few words to conclude, Jean-Claude, and after Patricia.
I think for each, you know, ESG in reality is not only a big multinational, or you know, everybody can start, and I think this is very key. The point also is to embed, I think, to embed it in a type of DNA of the entity, because at the end of the day, it's part of the values that we want to push to stakeholders internally and externally. And I think at the end of the day, so I think let's start. And initially there are very, very small things, you know, about obviously working with, being embedded in the nearby communities. That is a key element, I think, and particularly in Africa. And, you know, in most of our sites, and we saw that, you know, even more in Africa than, for example, in Europe or in US, you know, the facts to be very inclusive, you know, in the environment of our entities is a key element and a key factor of success. So I think let's start by that, and obviously all the rest will follow. So
thanks a lot, Jean-Claude. Patricia, a few words to conclude.
Yes, I would say that Africa faces a lot of challenge due to global climate change. And it's important to note that even though we are the least pollutant, we are the ones who suffered most. In the specific area of cocoa, the good thing is that the actors are aware and working to reduce deforestation linked to cocoa farming. So the actors with partners are surely, are slowly but surely moving to agroforestry. And this should reduce deforestation linked to cocoa farming. On a personal note, I would say that the certifications, the organizational designs, technical setup, rules and regulations we've set in place in the industry is a game changer. And the awareness by all the stakeholders is already a victory. I will end by quoting Paul Pullman, who says that the purpose of life is to give purpose to lives so that society thrives whilst the world survives. I would change it slightly to say that in the world we operate in today, the goal of a company must be to give purpose to lives so that society thrives whilst the world survives. And I believe by doing so, you will also succeed.
Thanks a lot, Patricia. I'm fully aware. Thanks to both of you. It's good to see that you can be an international company working in Africa. You can be a Ghanaian, Ivoire-Ghanaian company. And in both cases, you can embrace ESG strategy. You can embrace the purpose of ESG, as you just mentioned, that the purpose which is the most important. And by doing so, both of you have two very successful companies in Africa. So I do invite all companies to look at ESG, and I'm sure they can, as you said, serve the community, serve life by embracing robust, credible ESG strategies. Thanks to both of you. Have a good day.